Well, it's another day, and it's even another year, and another Trump scandal. Yep, that's right. Another bombshell, another Trump scandal. And in case you've had your head buried in the sand, lucky you, for the last couple of days, and you haven't heard about the famous Trump tapes, we had the Nixon tapes, and now we have the Trump tapes. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where the Trump tapes, albeit 1,000 times worse than the Nixon tapes, aren't going to produce the results that we saw in the Nixon era, where Nixon resigned under pressure of his own party. His own party told Nixon after the tapes were released, dude, you need to resign. Unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in today. And the Trump lackeys, the Trump supporters, are rallying behind him, rallying behind the madness, rallying behind the blatant abuses of power and the blatant absence of morality and the sense of right and wrong, not to mention legality. So what happened is Donald Trump called the Secretary of State of Georgia, and the phone call was recorded. And in that phone call, what I hear is an extremely desperate and unhinged. I'm going to go ahead and say it. He sounds, especially toward the end, he sounds unhinged. And yes, I listened to the entire 60-plus minute phone call of Trump's tirade so that you don't have to. You're welcome. And especially toward the end, when it was obvious Trump wasn't going to get his way, he started to become really more psychotic sounding, more desperate, more scared. And I urge everybody to listen to it and maybe try to listen to it with an open mind. This is a scared and desperate man. And many of us have been saying this since the election. He lost and he's scared. We don't know what he's scared of, but he's desperate. And in this phone call with the Secretary of State of Georgia, it was an hour-long spewing misinformation, conspiracy theories, and lies in an attempt to try to get the Secretary of State to change the outcome of the election. Donald Trump flat out used every tool in his mobster basket, whatever that is, what's that, the arrow quiver, in his quiver, to try to harass this Secretary of State into changing the will of the people. Let's be clear about this. You know, we often talk in kind of esoteric, you know, we want to change the votes. What Donald Trump is asking these legislators to do is to change the will of the people. And I'm going to spare you all the gory details because Trump didn't say a single true thing in that phone call. He continued to say things about, like, votes were counted 3 times. We have video that votes have been counted 3 times. They were put through the machines 3 times. And the Secretary of State said, no, Mr. President, that's not true. We have the raw tape. What you are seeing and what your team is spreading is a very obviously doctored tape that shows something that didn't happen. And this happened time and time again throughout the phone call. Trump kept going back on conspiracy theories and lies. Lies which, by the way, he's had more than 2 months and more than 60 court cases in which he could present evidence of these lies and allegations and conspiracy theories that he is still continuing to present to all of us today. He's had 2 months and 60 court cases, and yet he's not been able to prove any of these. He is not, and his team and his lawyers have not provided a single ounce of evidence. How can that be? How? And I know millions of people still believe him, but how? He has been given ample opportunity to present evidence to support what he is saying about election fraud and election rigging, and yet he has not been able to provide the evidence. Another of Trump's claims is that thousands of people showed up to vote on voting day only to be turned away. They weren't allowed to vote because when they gave their name, somebody had already voted in their name. And there were thousands of these. And so Trump's whole argument during this phone call is that he won, was without evidence, he won Georgia by 500,000 votes or something like that. And a lot of what he's saying is just the rantings of a lunatic. I won. It was the biggest overturn in history. I won. Everybody knows I won. Everybody knows I won Georgia. Well, no. The people who didn't vote for you, the people who voted for Joe Biden, and everybody who has recounted all the ballots, and everybody who lives in reality knows that you did not win Georgia. And yet he is claiming that there are hundreds of thousands of incidences of voter fraud, and that all he needs is 17,000 votes to overturn the election in his favor. So he's telling the Secretary of State, listen, there are hundreds of thousands of proven cases of election fraud, but just give me 17,000. That's all I need. Just give me, please, pretty please, just give me 17,000. Right, Sadie? That's what he's saying. And then when the Secretary of State pushes back and says, no, Mr. President, that's not true, he's like, well, you don't know what's good for you. If you know what's good for you, you will find those 17,000 votes, because you know, everybody knows. And I'm like imagining Sarah Cooper right now. Everybody knows that I won. And you need to find. So when pleading doesn't work, he goes to threatening, and he's threatening him with, oh, if you know what's good for you, oh, things are going to get really, really bad, because the people of Georgia are very, very angry. You just don't know how bad it's going to get. This is the language he's using in this phone call. And back to one of the examples that I was about to give of Trump alleging voter fraud. Thousands of people showed up and were not able to vote because somebody already voted for them. And these alleged voters are, of course, they showed up, they wanted to vote for Trump, and they couldn't because somebody already voted in their name for Biden. My question is, this is thousands of people. Where are they? If that happened to me, I'd be out talking to the first person with a camera I could find. I'd be on my cell phone at the polling place with video on all of my social media profiles. I would go to the people in charge of voting. I would go to the Secretary of State. And you're damn right, I'd be talking to the media in a time when elections are so hostile and uncertain as they are now. Where are these thousands or tens of thousands of people who showed up to vote and couldn't? Don't you think the news would have gotten a hold of them and have interviewed them by now? Even Fox News. Are they on Fox News? Where are all these invisible people who weren't able to vote? If we stop for a moment and ask these questions and think these allegations through, we might come to different conclusions than the one we're coming to, which is the one Donald Trump wants us to believe, and that is that the election was stolen from him. If we really think this through and say, well, Trump, if the election was really stolen, why were you not able to prove it in court 60 times? Is it possible, really, that 60 judges are part of the deep state and out to get you? Because you're so wonderful for the average person? No. He had 60 court cases, all the way up to the Supreme Court, who are 1/3 appointed by him, and he couldn't even make a case there. Many of the federal judges who heard the cases were appointed by him. You have to ask yourself, why is this not making sense? Because maybe there's something else to it. Maybe the one person or the people surrounding this one person aren't telling me the truth. That's the gist of the call, and like I said, you're welcome for listening to it so you don't have to. The bottom line, what I really wanted to talk about is this illegal? Did Donald Trump do anything illegal on this phone call? Well, we saw the now infamous phone call, notorious, whatever, with the Ukraine president a couple years ago, for which, I don't even know how long ago that was, for which he got impeached. We didn't even have tapes of that call, and he was impeached. Of course, the Senate didn't charge him, and so he is still in office. In this case, we have a tape, and what we hear is a desperate, pleading child. Really, it's so childish to hear him talk it doesn't even make any sense. It's nonsense, and it's gibberish, and it's pleading, and it's bullying, and it's harassing, and it's thinly veiled threats. But I don't know that I'm not a scholar, a constitutional scholar. I'm not an attorney. But if I've learned anything from the Ukraine scandal, I know that you kind of need a smoking gun. You kind of need him to flat out say, hey, you know what? If you don't turn the election for me, if you don't stop all this nonsense, if you don't turn the election for me, I'm going to sue you. Now, that, I don't even know if that would be enough to convince Republicans, to be honest with you, at this point. I don't know that it would have to convince Republicans. But we don't have that kind of a smoking gun. We have the rantings of a man who is unhinged, who doesn't sound mentally acute, mentally aware, mentally, he just doesn't sound like he's all there. I don't know if it's dementia, I don't know if it's something else, but he definitely does not sound like someone whose feet are planted in reality. However, he is smart enough to know that you can't come right out and say, you do this, or I need you to do this or else. He's smart enough. That's probably the one thing he learned from the Ukraine scandal is that he really just kind of has to stay away from those threatening words, and he has to just be a raving lunatic so that nobody will ever believe that he's actually trying to break the law on purpose. I think that's his strategy. The crazier I act, the less they believe I'm intentionally trying to do anything illegal. You know what? That might be it. But I don't know that it's anything illegal. I don't know that there is a smoking gun. It sounds to me an awful lot like what we heard on the Ukraine call. Nothing blatant. Quid pro quo was the big term that we heard. You know, you do this for me and I'll do this for you. I don't necessarily think I heard anything that blatant on the call. I don't think I heard anything strong enough to arrest him or to bring charges, although this morning Democrats did petition the FBI to probe the illegality of this phone call. Is it inappropriate? Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Everything Trump does is inappropriate. And that's what his base loves about him. They love that he's inappropriate. I have so much more to talk about in the next couple of days. I have several videos coming. So I will talk about the inappropriateness and what the heck is going on with Trump's base and all the people who support him. The other thing is that the local Georgia officials might also investigate the illegality of Trump's phone call and what it means for their election laws. So that's where we are right now. Was it illegal? Was it highly inappropriate and wrong for anybody with a moral compass who loves America and democracy and free and fair elections? Absolutely. But was it illegal? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. Like I said, I think the future will see whether or not it was indeed illegal. I can't answer that question, but stay tuned. Watch the news to find out. We have a big, huge election in Georgia tomorrow. I'm going to talk about that in a separate video, maybe today, because I have some thoughts on that as well. So stay tuned. Be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.